Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to our webinar on the topic of the leadership perception gap. My name is Allison Doring, and I am one of the business engagement managers here at Engagement Multiplier. In a few moments, I will hand it over to our founder and chief engagement officer, Stefan Bissenbach. But before I do, there are a few housekeeping items to cover. First, we will have a Q&A session following Stefan's presentation. So if you have any questions you'd like to submit, please feel free to do so at any point in time by using the Q&A button on your Zoom control panel at the bottom of the screen. We are going to try to get to everyone's questions, but also want to be respectful of your time. So if we don't get to your question, we will follow up with you individually. Second, for the best viewing experience, you'll want to be in the side-by-side mode. So if you aren't already, you can click View Options at the top of your screen, and in that drop-down menu, select Side-by-Side. Finally, just as a reminder, we will be sending out a copy of the slide deck and you will get access to the recording. So no need for any straining of hands taking notes. We will get that information over to you following the presentation. If you need anything outside of this, please use the chat button to privately send a chat to our panelists and someone will be able to assist you. I think that's it. So without further ado, thank you so much again for coming. Welcome, and here's Stefan.
Great, thank you, Ali, and hello everyone. Great to see that we have a combination here of partners and welcome existing clients. Great to have you with us, and then people that haven't worked with us yet. So great to have you all joining us this afternoon, or as Ali said, this morning, depending on where you are. Here's what I'd like to cover today. Great webinar planned for today. I've been spending a lot of time looking at the noise that exists out there at the moment on this topic. It's a big topic. Everyone's realizing how important leadership is in the new normal. And so we're going to start today by talking about leadership and its critical importance in a post-COVID world. The reason being is that it's changed and your leaders may need to change. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm going to spend some time then focusing on 7 essential leadership qualities. Some of these are qualities that you'd have expected leaders to have pre-COVID, and some of them now are qualities that need to be magnified in a post-COVID world as businesses work differently, with people working remotely, etc. I'm then going to spend some time talking about the perception gap, which is leadership's important, but you can have great leaders and you can have a strong proposition, but if the perception gap about your leaders isn't good, then you have a problem. We're going to talk about that and how you solve it. And then, because I want you all to leave today with some practical insight and value, we're going to provide you with some simple strategies that you can follow in order to succeed immediately. So this is linked very much with our desire to help you all emerge stronger from COVID than ever before. So let's talk a little bit about leadership. So first of all, some quotes. I love quotes, especially when they're good ones. And so I wish this person would have put their name on. I mean, it's a fabulous quote. So without leadership, all other business elements lie dormant. And then a business, successful or not, is merely a reflection of the character of its leadership. And then what I've been saying for the last few months is that in the post-COVID world, the ability to move from transactional to transformational leadership will be the differentiator, the key differentiator between businesses that thrive and those that fail. And let's not sugarcoat things. We've done a fabulous job of getting through COVID to date, but there are some potentially very challenging times ahead. I know that speaking to a number of our clients and just one this morning in Malta, that we have a journey ahead of us. And so what we want to do is equip ourselves best as possible to navigate that journey and emerge stronger. So the business landscape's changed, and we know that. And before we went into COVID, we knew how important leadership was. And I say some of this slightly tongue-in-cheek, it's horrible, but if you don't have strong leadership, then as you will know in your business, where you've had leadership in your business that hasn't worked, or you've actually in the past, perhaps in the early stages of your career, you've worked for a leader that was less than adequate. I'm sure we've all had that. You can understand the impact it has both on individuals personally, but also on the business, loss of profits, poor performance, competitors obviously start winning. But right now, as we emerge from COVID in probably some slightly challenging economic times, the ability for businesses to fail based on when the economy is really strong versus when it's challenging is higher. So leadership is more important than ever as we move into this new normal. And so just to ground it in a few sort of key areas here, how we work has fundamentally changed forever. For those of you that attended the webinar that I ran recently, which we'll send you the link to following this one, the Emerging Stronger webinar, we talked about how the workplace or the working environment's changed. How many more businesses now will have people probably like you are today, working from home as I am, and actually finding this as being quite an effective way of moving things forward. We've had to change rapidly. We've had to learn, all of us, as leaders and with our teams and team members to change because of the circumstances. And that's now becoming a core competency. Resilience, well, we've had to be resilient, and that's going to be a key factor moving forward. And then because of the way that the employee experience has rapidly changed, I think we're going to see much further evolution of that. We'll need to, because of what's happening. So, well, those are just my thoughts, but let's talk about McKinsey. They're far wiser than I am. And here's some things that they had to say recently on these key points. So, this point about how we work having changed forever, because we've been forced to work in new ways and employees are responding so well, with clear goals, focused teams, we have rapid decision making. And one of the things that's really appeals to me, because I love working with entrepreneurially minded organizations, is how that's replaced a lot of the corporate bureaucracy that previously existed. And beware if you have an organization that has a lot of that still, because that's not a good sign. And so leaders must commit now to not going back to the old ways. Let's look at the rapid change. So as I mentioned earlier, businesses have changed and individuals have had to change really quickly. So we must make sure, and I spoke about this in the Emerging Stronger, it's one of the competencies that if you haven't used the Emerging Stronger free survey yet, I really strongly encourage you to do it, because it will enable you to understand the systems and the practices that you've developed during this process that have really worked, some of the ones that you had in the past that perhaps could do with an upgrade, and some new ones that you might want to adopt in the future. Resilience, spoke about this just now, it's just so important. And what I particularly loved, and excuse me this one, it's not a low blow, but obviously as the founder of a business that is focused on helping organizations like yours engage their team members and have engaged organizations, I particularly love this one from Gallup, which is that businesses that where employee engagement is strong are much more resilient, and businesses where employee engagement is weak are less resilient, and those are the businesses that are at risk in a recession. Now, I don't know what the economic outlook is. I know it's going to be challenging. It would be foolish to think that it's anything but. We still don't know. COVID's uncertain. We don't know when it's going to go away. We don't know how it's going to go away. And so we've got to be adaptable, and we've got to be resilient. So let's go on to the employee experience. The employee experience. So once again, in our prior webinars, we talked about this return to work phase representing a real opportunity, as people come back from these last few months, whether they're still working from home or not. This, from a leadership perspective, this is an opportunity where you really need to start respecting individual differences, people's home lives, skills, capabilities, mindsets, personal characteristics. We have team members. So we have a team member on my team that's heavily pregnant. She was just showing us her bump before we jumped on this. And we have other team members that are managing other projects at home or issues at home. And I think what we've learned in our business is to be much more respectful of our team members' personal lives and adapting those and adapting to those, and then understanding the skills and capabilities that they have and how we can best work together in this new normal. It's actually very exciting. It's providing us with a lot of insight and a lot of ability to make progress. So the title of this webinar, the leadership perception gap. So what is it? Well, it's really simple. It's when you have a difference between the perception that the executives or the owners or the founders, the people at the top of the business, I don't like to use that word top, but just for context here, it's the people, the senior people in a business. It's the perception they have of the effectiveness of their leaders compared to the perception that the employees have of the effectiveness of the leaders. And we'll talk about perception later and what a wonderful thing it is. But when you have perceptions that differ greatly, then you have a gap. And the bigger the gap, the bigger the issue. And the bigger the gap, the bigger the real impediment that exists to the successful execution of company initiatives. And so one of the things that I've been focusing on with my team over the last few months is how we can help you emerge stronger from this and how we can help our clients and the businesses we serve grow and improve. And this is one of the things that we've noticed is a major issue that you really need to look at. You really need to understand, do you have a leadership perception gap in your business? Because if you do, it's very easy, once you know it's there, to understand what you've got to do to close it. And we'll talk a bit about that in a moment. But so let's talk about the qualities now. And there's been some amazing articles. I've got one here actually, which is Inc. magazine. And it's a lovely headline. It talks about, if you don't make these 5 changes, you're not a great leader anymore. It's written by Bill Murphy, Jr. Obviously, Bill Murphy was his dad. And it talks about, if you were a great leader before the pandemic, guess what? Everything's changed. And this is to my point earlier that the world has changed. And in your business, you could have had, you probably have some great leaders that were fantastic before COVID, but now when we're having to lead remotely sometimes, or we're having to lead under different circumstances, it's going to need a slight shift in focus. And I remember one of my early mentors talking to me about, are you a wartime general or a peacetime general? Are you, because they're very, very different. Different personalities, different characteristics and different skills for different times. And we are entering a different time. So we've done a lot of work, so you don't have to. Here's the 7 characteristics that, or the qualities, and I think it's better referring to them as qualities. The 7 C's, I'm calling them, makes it easy to remember. Obviously, the slides are available, as Ali said earlier. So the 7 qualities: courage, credibility, consistency, connection, confidence, caring, commitment, and courage. Now, some of these are going to seem obvious. In a minute, we're going to have a bit of fun with these, but I think life, well, I know that life's about balance. And as a leader, or when you're looking at your leaders, you would want your leaders in a post-COVID world to have balance between these. This is about not, if you're overweight in strongly overweight in 2 or 3 areas and underweight in the others, you're going to have issues. So it's about having balance. And your most successful leaders, and you as a leader, I'm assuming that the majority of the people on this webinar today are leaders. You will want balance. And I know that there's a number of clients on this webinar, but there's quite a lot of people that I don't know very well. So my son, Oliver, sadly died last year, unexpectedly at the age of 25. And one of the great things about my wonderful son was that he'd spent a lot of time writing anonymously on a website called Quora, helping others before he died. And I only got to find all of the wisdom after he passed away. And in one of the articles that he wrote, we've since published a wonderful little book called Sam Leeper's Little Book of Wisdom that talks about, which captures the insight and the wisdom that he had. He talked about balance, and what was interesting was that he spoke about how he would define a successful life. I mean, this was just before he wrote his bucket list, which was, as you can imagine, as a father, dealing with that afterwards was an interesting experience. And his words, which I haven't changed at all from his book, is that he defines a successful existence for him personally as striking a balance, and we can all learn from this, between working and playing, learning and teaching, following and leading, humility and confidence, and kindness and formidability. And he says that balance is a big one. And so before we prepared for this webinar today, I was talking to Jane, who I've worked with for many, many years. And she said, well, you know, when you talk about balance, I think it would be a really good idea to share with the audience today a bit about balance and on Ollie's view on balance. And so balance is huge. And so as I talk through these 7 characteristics or qualities now, I want you to think about them from 3 perspectives. So the first one is, how do you score? Okay, so as a leader, how do you score? How would you score yourself? And then I want you to think about how you would score your leaders. And then the third area I want you to think about is how your leaders would score themselves. So those 3 things. So I just want you to think, how would I score myself? How would I score my leaders? And how would my leaders score themselves? And we're not going to check in with you afterwards or anything. This is just for you with notepads, whatever, just relaxed. We're going to send you the slides if you missed something. And then we're going to talk about that at the end. So if we focus on the first one, which is courage, I love the word courage. Courageous leaders embrace the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so what I did before this webinar, just to have a bit of fun with the team, is we sort of listed for you, and please take some of this a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I think it will help make the point. We didn't want to run a boring webinar. We want it to be so we've got some characteristics here that there are leaders, and you might know some where they have scarcity in the courage quadrant, or the courage quality, and other leaders where they have it in abundance. Okay, so I've been quite extreme here with my examples because I wanted to be able to show you and give you sort of a sense of context for thinking about scarcity and abundance. So I'm not going to read through all of these. We're going to send you the slide deck. It'll be boring just hearing me read out from slides. But what's interesting is we just pick a couple of points here that, you know, and we've all met, I mean, I know I worked when in my early stages of my career, you know, there were people that I worked with where it was my way or the highway, and they'd go for long lunches, and they felt that their way of living was different to everyone else's. And they would skirt around problems because they didn't want a hard time, you know. And then you have leaders where, you know, they want to really understand what's going on. They don't care if it's a problem. They want to get to the grips with it. When they make their decisions, you can see their decisions are aligned with values. They display confidence, and they're actually coachable. You know, they're open to feedback. Absolutely fundamental. And when you have a courageous leader in your business, that inspires your team to take charge. Business grows. You're able to avoid procrastination, and there's efficiency, productivity, and energy, and excitement, and the business just works better, right? And it's not just courage that does that. There's other things that we need too. Here's another one: it's credibility. Credible leaders walk the talk. So, you know, once again, you'll be able to think of people that you hopefully knew in a past life. I'm hoping these people aren't in your business right now, but you know, where they're more interested in sort of do as I say, not as I do. They, you know, that they delegate more work than they do themselves. And I know that, you know, leadership is not about necessarily, you know, sometimes you need to spend a lot of time leading, but actually, you know, the team feel that they're with them. And so, you know, they're living the company's value and purpose. They really enjoy leading people. They're not just in a leadership position because it pays a little bit more. And they do show up as well in the same way that they expect others to. So they're credible leaders. And the impact of that is that when you're credible, you know, you're authentic, and authenticity is one of our values at Engagement Multiplier. And that breeds commitment and energy from employees. And that does actually make your job as a leader much easier, you know, and once again, productivity and everything else then thrives. Talk about consistency. So consistent leaders are aligned with the company's purpose and strategy. And that's another webinar, the COVID trap, where we talk about purpose, but Purpose so important. We know that it sits at the core of an engaged organization. And leaders that are consistent, well, consistency, as we know the word, you don't find they're not erratic in their behavior. I've worked with some erratic leaders, not very stabilizing. You may have worked with some. And consistent leaders are, it's not about being steady and boring, but they're consistent in the good things, and they're only erratic in the bad things. And so it's not just about them. We laugh about consistent leaders focusing the team on the things that they believe that are most important for them, or marching to the beat of their own drum. Whereas a consistent leader, you'll feel as someone that's being led by that leader that they're really completely aligned with the company direction and the company's goals and the purpose, and they're really just consistently doing things that are aligned with that. And that builds trust, and that really does build trust. And when you have good trust and you have good communication, that's when teams are at their strongest and they're most resilient. And so forth, therefore, is the business. So consistent leaders absolutely lead teams that deliver consistent results. So on to the next one, confidence. This is interesting because I want to talk to you here about outcomes over inputs. And so one of my weaknesses is I like to get involved. So, and I know that my team members that listen to this will be chuckling here, but, and it's not to micromanage, but I quite like detail. So I quite like understanding and getting involved. And I have to check myself regularly because I don't want to get too involved, because sometimes that involvement can feel that you're micromanaging a situation. And we know what it's like when you have confidence in a team member to get a job done. Well, similarly, you want confidence in a leader that they're going to have confidence in you to get the job done. So especially in this new world where we have a lot of people working remotely and so on. So we spoke in our last webinar about moving from inputs to outputs and focusing on outcome-based leadership. So talking to your team members about the outcomes that are required rather than the what rather than the how, because most people, if they've been in the job for a while, they can figure out the how, they really get it. So confident leaders really work like that. And they don't have this mindset that if I allow team members flexibility, chaos will ensue. And frankly, in a post-COVID world, you have to do that. And one of the things that's interesting, if I look at this article from Bill Murphy Jr., he talks about the fact that great leaders now will carve out time to let employees know how they're doing and what needs to be worked in. So they're worked on, but they're remote and they're letting them get on with it. So they've got confidence in their team members. And so once again, that is trust. And one of the things that I think is very important here is having trust. And if I look at Bill's article, actually, when I talk about Bill's article on these 5 points, and we can send you the link in the follow-up email. But when I went through his 5 points, and the headline is, if you don't make these 5 changes, you're not a great leader anymore. What I found was that the 5 points, and it is a great article, but the 5 points really relate to connection and caring, which I'm going to talk to you about in a moment. Every one of the 5 is about connection and caring. And so connection's a really important one. And connection and confidence. And we're going to, me getting ahead of myself, talk about connection. So connected leaders have a one purpose and one team mindset. And when connection, well, I mean, here's a funny one. I don't always remember my team members' names. I'm sure you may have met a leader or two like that. I remember meeting somebody I thought was very important in my first job. And I've been working in his division for many, many months. And I sat about 4 desks outside his office, and he didn't know my name. It was a moment for me about leadership, and we can learn from the bad and the good. But the connection mindset, the connection quality, is about being in touch with what's going on, understanding your team's objectives, communicating the big picture to everybody, but really that connection point, being in a position where you're able to coordinate teamwork. Back to Bill's article again, he talks about we're imperfect communicators. We are. I just messed up. We're imperfect communicators to begin with, but when we add the circumstances of purely virtual communication, the opportunities for messages to be mislaid or points to be missed only increases. That's why being the kind of leader who ensures that Jane is doing X whilst Peter is doing Y is so important. So connection, a connected leader does have strong relationships with team members, and that strong communication and clear communication enables leaders to align teams, drive growth, and successful business expansion. So very, very important. Now we're going to get on to one that I love. It's very dear to my heart. I think caring is very important. We talk about working as a business with brave, caring, identifiable owners of growth-focused companies. And so caring is something that bothers us at Engagement Multiplier. And if you're a client of ours and you're on this webinar, it's probably because you care about your team members. You don't just see them as a commodity. You want to, you appreciate them for who they are. I talk about business families and private families, and caring is important. And caring leaders, I think one of the biggest qualities here, I mentioned it earlier when I was looking at Bill's article, caring leaders, caring is a really important quality right now. And I'm not going to go against my wonderful son's words about balance, but I think if you were going to have a slightly overinflated area, caring could probably not do you too much harm. And caring leaders really do see people as individuals, not a commodity. I'm amazed how many business leaders still don't get it. Good luck. And they provide mentorship to help people, grow and be the best they can be. They're focused about their employees' well-being. They're interested about their personals, even more so now that people are working from home. And then you have the scarcity side of it, where they basically they rule by fear. They're here to get a job done. They don't really care. They think a paycheck is enough. We give them a paycheck at the end of the month. That's enough. And they feel that everyone's replaceable. And it's sadly, there's a lot of these leaders around at the moment, but they're clearly in the wrong roles. And caring leaders, well, the workplace is healthy, it's productive, it's energizing, and satisfaction, employee satisfaction, productivity, retention improves, and we get rid of that horrible office politics. So caring, very, very important. Everyone wins in that environment. The final C is commitment. Couldn't have our 7 C's without this. And this is really important. And for those of you, the leaders on the call, so important right now. The reason it's important right now is that, as I said in my last webinar, the focus on the future and commitment to the future is one of the things that will inspire your team members right now. We're all living in an uncertain world. We turn on the television, the news is crap. We keep hearing about this sort of impending business challenging time. People are feeling vulnerable. So when you have a leader in your business that is completely focused on the future, but here in the present, and they're also driving the business forward to the future, they're aligning their actions and the team's actions with bigger goals and the future. That's incredibly energizing for an employee. So, leaders that have this in abundance, are willing to go above and beyond. They're invested in the business. They're focusing intentionally on the future. And leaders that don't, you can tell really, because they're in the wrong role. They're just using this as a stepping stone before they go on someone else. They sometimes self-promote. I don't know whether you've ever had anyone take advantage of your great ideas and not give you credit. And they're not really tackling the challenging issues. So the issues that really need to be addressed. So leaders that show commitment are invaluable. And right now it's a core competency, because you will not lead your team out of COVID into the new normal unless you can show commitment. And the impact of a committed leader is, well, we love this phrase. It's not Lionel Richie, is it? Oh, maybe it is. I don't know. Someone can correct me on the chat. When the going gets tough, the tough gets going. They aren't distracted by flavor of the day trends. And so what happens with a committed leader is you get loyalty, you get confidence, and the employees become more personally invested in the company's success. And so something we see often at Engagement Multiplier. So there we have the 7 C's, very conscious of time. We're at 1:30, and we want time for questions. So 7 C's, very easy to remember, very easy to focus on. You're going to have the slide deck, but here's the thing now, the next stage. So against the context of those, I want you to think about, and I shared 3 of these questions with you at the beginning quite deliberately. So the first one was, how would you score yourself? The second, how would you score your leaders? And then thirdly, how would your leaders score themselves? And that in itself would be insightful. But the fourth, how would your employees score their leaders? Because that's what really matters. That's when I spoke earlier on about perception. And we didn't appreciate, when I founded Engagement Multiplier years ago, and I knew back then that the way to dramatically transform an organization was to measure this woo-woo topic that wasn't really normally measured, because when you measure something, you can improve it. I knew that if we could measure engagement in key areas, it would provide incredible insight that would enable business transformation. But what I didn't appreciate was this. We see this all the time. And in fact, I asked my head of analytics earlier, I said, what percentage? And they couldn't give me one, so I'm not going to make one up. But they said it's close to 90%. And that feels very real for me. I feel that majority of engagement reports, and for those of you that are clients, you may have seen this on your own. For those of you that aren't clients yet, this is the sort of thing you may well see. And that is that we've taken the company name out here to protect anonymity, but here's the perception gap. So, and this is a typical dashboard for an engagement multiplier customer where leadership score by the owners in this business is 87.5. The leaders themselves think they're pretty good. They gave themselves 76.6. Employees 67. So there's not a problem here. This is not a problem. This is an opportunity. It's either a misunderstanding, in which case there's an opportunity to correct the misunderstanding, or there's a reality, there's a problem, in which case there's an opportunity to correct the problem. And whichever way you take, there's a win at the end. And so we often see this. This is very, very, very common. And I love this quote by David Simon, absolutely fantastic quote on the topic of perception and reality. And that is really, reality is ultimately a selective act of perception and interpretation. Wonderful words. A shift in our perception and interpretation enables us to break old habits and awaken new possibilities for balance, healing, and transformation. Now, what I want for you, and what all of us at Engagement Multiplier want for you, is for you and your business to try and transform and emerge stronger than ever. So what a better way than to understand what the reality is for your team members, what their perception is, their perception gap, and then spend time addressing any misunderstandings or pursuing any opportunities in order to be able to address that. And as I've said many times, we can't predict the future, but if we can accurately learn from the past, then we can confidently act in the present and thrive in the future. And I'm going to add to that for today that with accurate data, you can close the perception gap. And so what we've done, we've been working really hard on this, and it's only gone live today. We've been working really hard on this for the last few weeks. Is the fourth in our series of capabilities to help you emerge stronger from COVID and build a really great business. And this fourth capability is the leadership perception gap. It will enable you to understand, it's a great survey that enables you to understand in the eyes of your employees how strongly the leaders that you have in your business score against those 7 C's. And clearly you would be involved in this as well. I've deliberately done it in such a way that it doesn't become a witch hunt, because I'm very conscious of the fact that when you start asking for feedback in certain ways, you can create issues. And I know that some team members in organizations right now are feeling bruised. So take a look at the questions when you speak to one of our team members, but you'll see that they are very thoughtfully constructed, and they will enable you to get some insight from your team members on how they feel your leadership scores against the 7 C's. You'll also be able to spend some time doing the same. And if you haven't taken advantage of part of the other surveys in this series, the working from home and winning, I know a number of businesses are still working from home as we are. Really great insight. Emerging stronger, capturing the insight and learning from your team members about how you can really emerge stronger from this process. And then finally, the COVID trap, how to avoid it, that sort of trap that a lot of businesses are in right now, where COVID has united us against common enemies. But today's not about those 3, although they're absolutely there for you. Today's all about the leadership perception gap. And it's been a real pleasure. Thank you. I've enjoyed talking about my passion. I'm really looking forward to answering some questions. I'm going to put on the screen now there's if you've got a QR code capture on your phone, or just take a photo of it, or there's a bit.ly link there. So in order to register for the leadership perception gap and take the free survey, absolutely completely free, no strings attached, just either make a note of the link, click the QR code, and at the end of this webinar, when we say goodbye, there will be the ability for you to register direct. So if you're feeling that this is something that you might want to have a look at, then I would strongly encourage you to register at the end. Our team members will then be in touch with you individually to talk to you about it, whether it's right for you right now, how it could work. There's no cost, there's no commitment. We just want to help you. And I'm looking forward to answering questions. So Ali, back to you. I haven't even seen if we've had questions come in, because I've been so focused on looking at the camera. So what do we have? Do we have any questions?
Yes, we do have some questions. Thank you, Stefan. But I wanted to start that, unfortunately, I hate to break it to you, it was Billy Ocean, not Lionel Richie, that said, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So you were right. We all are imperfect people.
I should get that right. I'm a little bit older than you. That should have been the other way around.
I had to Google it. So first question is from Jay Copeland. Any advice on how to introduce the survey to my leadership team? I could see some people feeling a bit threatened or defensive.
Great question, Jay. So it's an interesting point, isn't it? And as we were creating the questions for this, we're thinking about this. So I think a leader with the right mindset will see this as an opportunity. So I personally, as we've gone into COVID, I'm having to work differently with my team, and understanding whether your interactions are hitting the spot or not. The best way to find out really is to find out from your team. So your less confident leaders will probably struggle with this a little bit. That's not so much of a problem, by the way. But I think the majority of it, I would present this to your leaders as an opportunity. This is clearly an opportunity and have the slide deck and talk about that slide at the end, the slide where we talk about perception or reality being that combination of perception and so on. So I would spend time with the leaders, letting them know, and why we're doing it fundamentally is that you and they want them to become, we want to help them to be the strongest that you can possibly be as we emerge together from COVID. So yeah, I think the only leaders that would have an issue with this are leaders that where all of a sudden they think, oh my goodness me, I'm going to be found out. Well, shame on you. Time to be found out. If you're in a leadership position, I think that comes with some accountability and responsibility. So you have to be prepared to be stand up and be counted.
Fantastic. Next question is from Molly Foley. If our company is already conducting quarterly EM surveys, would you also recommend introducing this survey as well? Or are we capturing some of this in our quarterly surveys? Can you over-survey leading to disengagement?
Great question, Molly. So one of the things that we've done at Engagement Multiplier over the last few months is we've focused very heavily on launching our on-demand library, which you have full access to. And all of these surveys that I'm talking about today, they're in that library. And you get the ability to create your own custom surveys at any time. And that's really important because I do think that quarterly benchmark surveys is sort of the maximum frequency. It's the ideal frequency until you get to the point where you're engaged, and then you can start to even make them once every 6 months or maybe even once a year. The great thing about these targeted surveys is that they're on a specific topic. They're not general about the engagement. So when you do one about leadership, so you go to your team and you say, emerging from COVID is really important to us, and we want to make sure that we feel that our leadership is strong, and we can help take this business to the next level as we come out, because we care about you, we care about the business. So we're going to run a short, less than 10-minute survey on this to help you so you can give us your feedback and etc. And I think that doing that as an approach, or doing an on-demand survey to one particular group in the business at any time, is fine. Survey fatigue only comes in really when it's different, the same topic repeated regularly. And here, when you're doing things that are fresh, and the reason it won't get fatigued, by the way, actually, I nearly missed a fundamental point there. Survey fatigue occurs if you don't give them the payback, right? So if you ask people to participate in a survey and then it's crickets, and then you ask them a little bit later to participate in another survey and it's crickets, after a while they're going to go, why am I doing it? If you say, right, give us some feedback, here's the questions, they give you the feedback, go, great, thanks for the feedback, here's what we're going to do as a result of this valuable feedback, really appreciate it, these 3 things, done. Here's another survey on something completely different, give us your feedback, thank you, we really appreciate your feedback, we're going to do this, this and this. You can go all day with that, as long as the team members know that you're listening and acting, they'll continue to feel invested. It only gets tired when it's repetitive and there's nothing new.
Fantastic. Next one is from Paul Turner. I'm thinking of keeping most of my team working from home for the foreseeable future at least. Can you still bridge the gap when you're not in the same place?
Absolutely. And it's more important than ever. And that's the whole reason I'm running this webinar, is that, leadership in the new normal is completely different. It's not the same. When you're in the same office, it's one set of skills, right? When you're having to do, it's like now I'm having to talk to you through a camera. It's a different form of communication. You need to get adept at that to lead your business. And so, yes, you absolutely need to understand. If you're, and I applaud you. I think a lot of businesses now are going to be doing this, working from home a lot of the time. And do check out this article. I'll get his name right. Bill Murphy, Inc. magazine. Do check it out, because it talks about the fact that a lot of the old in-person leadership styles are relevant now. We've gone from a 3D environment to a 2D environment. So yes, it's very important to understand the perception gap and see how you need to adjust your leadership if you want to have a lot of people working from home in the future. This is for you.
All right, I've got something a little bit different. There was a statement that came in that I wanted to read, and then we'll do one final question. That works? So statement was, thank you for sharing Oliver's quote. It got me thinking about balance in my own life. Not what I expected from this webinar, so just wanted to say thank you. So wanted to share that. And then the final question that we have is for, let me 1 second, sorry, I'm trying to pull it up. I'm involved with an organization where there's a definite perception gap. The solution for leadership has been to shut down all internal debate. Does that not toe the that does not toe the company line? Thoughts?
Get a great resume. Ready. Well, sorry, I don't want to be flippant. I mean, sometimes you can't put in what God left out. I mean, I find sometimes you're dealing with organizations where you're thinking, oh my goodness, how did this happen? If you have the rump of your leadership team in your business completely uncoachable, unwilling to have feedback, I think this webinar just sent you a signal. I mean, share it with them. Maybe that could be the final thing, and share it with them. Organizations right now, I don't mean to be blunt, but organizations right now that don't have leaders who are willing to listen, who display the 7 C's, aren't going to be great places to work. And so if you're in an organization like that and you can't change it because it's too big, then I would recommend that you seek your happiness elsewhere rather than potentially having a miserable time moving forward. And if you can change it, then great. And maybe you want to pick up with me separately after this, and we'll see what we can do. If there's, if it's a problem that can be solved, I'm happy to sort of see if our team can provide some resources or things that might be to support you. So I'm not giving up on the organization, but fundamentally sometimes, we had this happen the other day with a client who clearly just didn't care about his employees. Someone else had set up the survey and he just wasn't even prepared to look at the results. And I said to my team, I said, it's time to just calmly walk away. You can't, this is not going to become a client that's going to actually care about his employees and move things forward. We can't, you can't put in what God left out. So we'll help you as much we can. Reach out to us separately, but it's really there's a fork in the road, I think.
Great point. And on that, we are going to be wrapping up. So if we didn't answer your question, we will be following up with you individually. I know there were some existing clients and partners and some new faces. So thank you everyone so much for attending. As a reminder, we will be sending out the webinar recording and the slide deck, so you can look out for those. Anything else you wanted to say, Stefan?
Well, no, thank you, Ali, first of all. And then thank you everyone that attended. It's great to be able to communicate in this new normal like this. And I hope you took some value from today. That was my wish. We've got some great free capabilities to share with you. For our clients that have joined, thank you. We really appreciate you. And, it's great to be with you on this journey. And for those of you that are new to Engagement Multiplier, would love to work with you. And really appreciate your time today. So continue to do the right things and continue to emerge stronger from COVID. And we'll continue to be here to support you. Thank you very much.